PodcastCoug Season 6, Episode 8.
You're listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. And now, here is your host, PodcastCoug.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PodcastCoug. I am James Laurie, the PodcastCoug, and you are listening to the PodcastCoug, where we're all things Cougar football, 30 minutes of Coug talk, and we're talking about our new coaching staff, Jake Dickert, our win against Stanford, and our upcoming huge game against BYU on Saturday in Pullman. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Episode 8, Season 6. Okay, it was Washington State 34, Stanford 31, and so we lost our coach, but yeah, you're right. We are slowly transforming over to the new Jake Dickert era, interim, and it's time to move on, right? It's time to move on. It's tough. It is tough, but for the players, it really is. But you know what? Attitude is everything, right? You know, we can have a pity party, right? Gimme, my name is Jimmy, right? Or a poor old me. But what is that going to do, right? It's all attitude. Let's flush and move on, right? I always say a setback is a setup, right? A setback is a setup. It sets us up for better things in the future. It really does. When we have setbacks in our life, we want to rejoice. We want to be happy we didn't get that house, right? We didn't get that spouse, right? If you're dating and things don't go right, rejoice. If you don't get the house, you know what? There's something better. It might be because you're supposed to be in a specific neighborhood where your kids are going to meet and have future relationships. If you don't get the right job, if you get fired from a job or you don't get the right job, you think it's the end of the world. You know what? We want the right doors to open and the right doors to close. And so remember, a setback is a setup. And after, if you think about it, after the first couple of games, those two losses, a lot of us, including myself, felt that Pat Chun made a huge hiring mistake. Really, we all did, right? Bad and poor coaching decisions. If you remember game 1, game 2, starting Garantano, Garantano was in, putting in Cam Cooper for the wishbone on that 5-yard line, throwing the long ball on 3rd and 3 or 4th and 1, just throwing the long ball right over and over, 4th and 2. Here we have, and we're throwing the long ball. Decisions, coaching decisions. What's going on? We're like, what is Rolo doing? We thought this was a great hire, right? I mean, back in the day, last year, he showed up on 2020. He showed up the Magnolia Pub in Seattle and bought beers for everybody. He showed up in downtown Pullman and bought dinners, picked up the tab, and we knew that Leach can't beat Lake in the Apple Cup. Never did, right? Rush 3, drop 8. We always lost to Lake. But we always thought that Rolo could beat the Huskies, regardless of the record. Then came this season, 2021, losing to Utah State, losing to USC, right? Up at the half, 14-0 against USC. Granted, Delora didn't return on the second half, losing to Salt Lake down in Utah, right? Utah and Salt Lake making some bad coaching decisions. We thought, you know what? We got the wrong guy in the wrong bus, right? This is just not a good hire, right? And what is this guy thinking? I mean, it's over his head, right? He belongs in the big sky or the Mountain West, right? I mean, go back to Hawaii, which really he only had one good season in Hawaii, right? So, and we just felt that Chun made a hiring mistake. And then things changed, right? Things changed. We beat Cal down in Berkeley. We beat Oregon State for the 8th straight time. We beat Stanford for the 5th straight time. And he made adjustments. The key is he made adjustments, right? So literally, Rolo made some adjustments with position coaches, and he schemed up schemed up on how to win, and makes those adjustments. Especially, we saw the defense emerge, right? Guys flying around, our edge rushers making plays, getting to the quarterback, sacks, stops. It's like that Speedy D we once had, and things look great. I mean, really, right? The last 3 weeks, it's just flipped. And I flipped, right? I flipped like many people flipped. I literally flipped right? And then we said, forget the COVID thing, forget the shot. We flipped. And then we saw the players were playing for him, they were playing for him out of their heart. We saw it on the sidelines. We saw it on the field. We saw it off the field, maturity, character from Rolo, and how he treated the kids, how he treated the players. He was a player's coach. They loved him. He never criticized anybody, never called anybody on the bus, never called them out, right, publicly. And I flipped, right? Just flipped. And I started to love this guy. Truly started to see how he was special.
I'm proud to coach these guys every minute I get a chance to, every last one of them. And, of course, there's always growth, there's always improvement, but their heart's in the right place and they care about the right things and really love representing this university.
Let's hear that again. Rolo's last words on audio.
I'm proud to coach these guys every minute I get a chance to, every last one of them. And, of course, there's always growth, there's always improvement, but their heart's in the right place and they care about the right things and really love representing this university.
And I really love representing this university. Then it happened. Rolo was fired on Monday, October 18th for a non-compliant mandate by the governor. And his 4 assistants, Ricky Logo, John Richardson, Craig Stutzman, right, and Mark Weber, all fired, all of them. Of the 4, only John Richardson did not come from Rolo's staff in Hawaii, right? Stutzman's younger brother, by the way, who made those tweaks and adjustments. Stutzman was doing a great job for us. We won those games, honestly, I think because of Craig Stutzman. Some of those games, that schemes, the adjustments that Rolo made, Stutzman was doing those calls, right? His younger brother, Billy Ray Stutzman, was dismissed as an offensive assistant at the Naval Academy in September for refusing to follow the Academy's mandate as well, right? So the vaccine mandate. So this is not Chun's fault, right? This is not Pat Chun's fault. It's not President Schultz's fault, right? This is Governor Inslee's fault. 2 states out of the entire United States has this mandate, Oregon and Washington. This is clearly on Governor Inslee, clearly. Not Pat Chun and not President Schultz. They are just employees and doing what they want. Right? I mean, unless they want to get fired, right? And I'm disrespectful by saying they're puppets, but Chun and President Schultz are respectively puppets because they're doing what they have to do. They know where their paycheck is coming from, and their paycheck is coming from the state of Washington, who is in charge of that? That, of course, is Governor Inslee. So it's really Inslee's fault, right? So, and if you take a look at the COVID cases right now, in my observation, things are going down. I mean, I don't see us, you've got to wear masks indoors, right? I don't see that essential in the future, next month or in the month. I mean, things are just the cases are going down. Very few people are getting sick, and so when they lift that mandate and the indoor mask mandate required in November or December, that's very unfortunate with timing with Coach Rolovich, right? I mean, remember, a setback, though, is a setup, right? This is going to set up for something good. We have no choice but to look to the future. We have no choice but to be optimistic. Yeah, it hurts for the kids, for the players. We have no choice. We're going to sit there in a pity party all day long. And I know we're over this, that transformation, that change, that denial, that resistance. We are in that exploration and then the commitment stage. But we need to rejoice when the doors close. Right? Seriously. And I love that this never happened, right? I flipped. I was a Rolo believer. After those 3 games, I totally flipped. And, it's an obvious that he's a player's coach. And the only thing we don't know was Rolo's recruiting. Is he a good recruiter? And I suppose if you just win out or just keep winning, the recruits will come, right? And so and then the play calling we talked about a few minutes ago, right? 3rd and 2, 4th and 1, right? Throwing the long ball on 4th and 1 or 3rd and 2. I mean, really? when we've got Dion and Borgie and, and of course the long ball works when you look like a hero. I mean, it looks wonderful when you look great. Look at a gambler. An avid gambler won't tell you how much he's lost, but he'll tell you his winnings. He'll tell you how much he won, right? So, take a look when you throw a 40-yard bomb and you don't make it, you look horrible. When you make it, you look great. So, more importantly, though, you got to feel for the kids. They've gone through so much. 3 coaches in 3 years, 2 deaths, and 1 player fatality. It's got to be hard on them, but it's got to be hard. But hopefully they're strong enough to get over. And I like some of that JDL Dolores, that leadership that he, on social media that he released on that write-up that he did, or somebody helped him write that up. But I like how he's saying, you know what, we need all the support from the fans, and we're all in. And it's not just about one person. It's the whole team, right? So let's group together. Let's win this thing, and for the fans to come out, and we need your support. We need to hear from the fans. We need some support. So, and maybe we're going to come out on Saturday with their hair on fire. The kids are going to have their hair on fire against BYU, right? They're going to be excited, hopefully, to play for Coach Dickert, right? Hopefully we can get some positional coaches in there. Where's Alex Brink when we need him, right? We know that Alex is in Oregon. He runs the color on radio with Matt Chazanow. And, Alex is and has been a very competent quarterback coach, and he runs a good program down in Oregon. And, even Jason Gesser. Jason was a good guy. And I wish he didn't, kind of wish he had a second chance. He was a great Coug, and he made some bad choices, some really bad choices in his life that cost him his relationship with Washington State University. And he has to live with it. So last Saturday, Washington State down 13-0 in the first quarter against Stanford. We thought, okay, here we go again, right? Here we go again. Eventually, we stormed back to take an 11-point lead in the third quarter before Stanford took the lead again midway through the fourth quarter. And the Cougs scored on a 70-yard run with 1:30 on the clock to win a thriller, 34-31. With our fifth win against Stanford, our 5th win in a row against Stanford. The players unloaded a bucket of yellow Gatorade on Nick Rolovich's head, and Travell Harris jumped on Rolo's shoulders. Others embraced Rolo for what figured probably his last game, right, in the locker room. And then in the locker room, there's a video, by the way, flying around on social media, all the players circling around, surrounding Rolo before breaking into a chant. Rolo, 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 Rolo. It was great. So, I just thought it was so cool to see the players swarming around and giving him that Gatorade shower to celebrate his final game at Washington State. And then 48 hours later, he got fired. Bottom line, Rolovich doesn't let the government tell him what to do. I mean, that's simple as that, right? Unfortunately, this has created division amongst Cougar Nation, families, and players. And we talked about how change is difficult. It never is, right? But let's move on and see how great this season can be, right? I mean, that's all we're going to do. We're going to move on, right? And for Stanford, back to Stanford, Delora finished with 289 yards, passing 3 touchdowns. Borgie had 2 TDs of his own. Travell Harris once again had a remarkable day with 5 catches for 71 yards and a score. Defense again generated 4 sacks, 2 on the final drive with Stanford, and 8 tackles for a loss and 2 turnovers they forced. And it's interesting to see a Stanford team struggling to run the ball. I mean, it's very interesting. The Cardinal came up last Saturday averaging less than 100 yards a game on the ground, which never happened over the course of a full season for David Shaw. Just never, and Saturday was no different for the Cardinal. I mean, 76 yards on the ground, 2 yards per rush. That's just not something you'd expect from Stanford on an averaging 2 yards per rush. So here we are. We are the Cougs are now in the hunt for the Pac-12 North. Here we are. Hey, let's talk about BYU, the BYU Cougars, next, right here on the second half of the Podcast Coug.
Hey, Coug fans. You're podcasting with James Laurie and the PodcastCoug Radio Network. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show, featuring all things Cougar football in Washington State. To help you get through the week, hit the subscribe button or check us out on iTunes, the App Store, iOS, Google Play, Stitcher, or at PodcastCoug.com.
The real estate agent you work with matters, and a great agent helps you own the home of your dreams. And your dreams come true with James Laurie at Coldwell Banker Bain, representing clients like you 24/7, from condos to colonials and everything in between. If you're selling, buying, need a price analysis, or just a contractor referral, ask James, winner of the 2015 through 2019 International Coldwell Banker Diamond Award, with dozens and dozens of 5-star Zillow reviews and Seattle Magazine's 5-star award winner for 2018 through 2020. James Laurie, Coldwell Banker Bain, at 425-466-3672 or jameslaurie.net. Rock solid results.
You're listening to the Podcast Coug.
Two running backs in with the quarterback. Signals called. All man in motion goes through to the right side. Handoff wings out to the right side. Touchdown, Washington State.
You are listening to the Podcast Coug.
Welcome back to the second half of the Podcast Coug. I am James Laurie, the Podcast Coug, where we're all things Cougar football, all things Cougs, and it's Cougs versus Cougs. How many times in your life are you going to say that? How many times are we going to play BYU? How many times are we playing Houston? Well, it's happening on Saturday for the fifth time, right? Here we go. It's BYU 12:30, Martin FS1. And we've already got 7 games already, right? 7 games, and guess what? 6 of those 7s have been afternoon games, right? 6 out of 7. That's unreal. It's just unimaginable for the past decade, right? Maybe 2 decades. It's all been night games, night game after night game, getting out at 11:30, 11 o'clock. If you're doing an over and back from the West Coast, it's brutal. It's brutal. It's 4 in the morning. You're rolling into King County, and it's absolutely a brutal over and back. Nope. These are all day games, 6 out of 7. What an amazing year. You know, I'll tell you something. The better teams are in the afternoon. I mean, and I think that maybe our AD has really pushed to try to get those afternoon games with those TV slots. So for sure. Now, Huskies are playing tomorrow night. This is Friday night. Tomorrow, Friday night, if you're listening on Thursday to the Podcast Coug, Friday night, Huskies down in the desert, Arizona, Tucson. And you have to wonder how competitive it's going to be with the Huskies are playing the 0-6 Wildcats. Arizona's lost 18 in a row. University of Arizona football team has now lost 18 after losing to Colorado last week. That is just crazy. So we'll see what the Huskies are going to do for their Friday night game, right? So, hey, back to the Cougs. It's Cougs versus Cougs. BYU was number 19. They dropped out of the AP 25, losing to Baylor, the Bears, right, in Waco, which, yeah, they Couged it, right? We'll just go ahead and throw it on there. We hate the word Couged it, right? BYU Couged it with a total of 303 rushing yards. They gave up the lead and losing the game. They Couged it. BYU has lost 3 defensive linemen against Baylor. These guys are injured, okay? We're going to talk about that. BYU football head coach Kalani Sitake is going on his sixth year at Provo, right? Frankly, BYU just can't stop the run. I'm going to say it again. Those guys can't stop the run, right? So, and hey, what about Deion McIntosh and Jahad Woods? Are they going to be back, right? After, Jahad got targeting last week. We're going to expect Jahad Woods to be back. Will Deion be healthy? Is he going to be ready to play? We need both of those guys, right? BYU cannot stop the run. We all know that BYU is an independent, right? They are moving out of the being an independent of the Big 12. They're going to the Big 12 next year in 2023, right? So BYU, they've been trying to get to be a Power 5, to be in the Power 5 conference for over 40 years. They are just, they're ecstatic. They're just crazy. They are so jacked up and excited that they're going to the Big 12. say what you want to say about the Big 12. You know, they've lost a couple teams, right? And say what you want to say, but boy, the BYU fans are super excited and they are just jacked up. And speaking about the independents, right? We talked about the independents they're in. There's only 7 independents. We're talking about just roughly, it's briefly, it's Army, Liberty, right down in Lynchburg. And they have a coach down there. Liberty is amazing, right? Hugh. And I'll tell you, if Coach Jake Dickert does not work out as our head coach, and I feel that he's going to. I mean, if we win out, I think Jake has got a great opportunity, right? And I think it could be a very good fit. Remember, a setback is a setup, right? But if not, there's a coach down at Liberty University who's an independent. They're FBS. It's their 2nd or 3rd year, and they're beating everybody down there. And their head coach, Hugh, and I can't remember his last name off memory. That is an amazing coach, okay? New Mexico State, Notre Dame, Connecticut, and UMass. Those are the independent schools. And what's interesting, you've got 3 schools. One of them is faith-based, which is Liberty. The other one is LDS-based, which, of course, is Brigham Young. And the third is Catholic-based, which is Notre Dame. So very interesting on the independent. BYU, as mentioned, heading to the Big 12 next year. And now they've got a bye in November, just like we do. They've got a late bye coming up in November, and we're going to close our home with BYU. Now, that last game was down in Provo, Mike Leach's first year, 2012. And, if BYU wins on Saturday, they're going to be bowl eligible at 6 games, right? So they would be 6-2 if they beat the real Cougs, right? We are the real Cougs, right? We've got the greatest logo in the history of college football in the entire United States. Fear the logo, right? Come into Martin Stadium and see if you can outperform our logo, right? We beat people by just looking at our helmets there. They've got fear, right? And so, but if they do win on Saturday at Martin, which I don't think they will, they're going to be 6-2 bowl eligible. Jaron Hall is their QB, right? They also have a Baylor Romney as their QB. Now, wide receiver Puka Nakua played for the Huskies for a couple of years, if you recall. And 3 things we need to know about on Saturday. BYU has a ton of injuries, like I said, tons of injuries. Their captain and starting linebacker, Kaneen Pili, is out for the season with an ACL. Kaneen Pili, he is an amazing player. He's out. He's torched, and hopefully he's going to get healed up, but he's not going to play on Saturday, right? They can't stop the run, right? And they're sort of in a funk, right? They've lost 2 straight games in a row. So, and should we be concerned, right? Is it possible that our coaching change leads up to just a nightmare of a game on offense, especially? BYU already owns 3 Pac-12 wins this year, and Jaron Hall is listed as the starter. So BYU ranks 25th in the FBS in quarterback efficiency. And its offense has scored on 92% of its red zone trips, exceedingly well balanced. Their running back, Tyler Algier, he has 670 yards. He's one of the top 25 in the nation with stats for rushing, right? So the BYU Cougs defeated both Utah and Utah State with very nice margins. Both of those teams we have lost to, right? Earlier in the year, right? They beat Utah State and Utah. We lost to both of those. So it's very interesting, right? We've only met 4 times. Most recently, like I said, 2012, and they just blew by us 30-6, and that was Mike Leach's opening debut as head coach. Jeff Toole was our guy. BYU is overall record 3-1 against us, and you guys remember, if you remember, way back, and I was there at Jack Murphy Stadium, the most memorable meeting between these 2 programs, these 2 schools, undoubtedly, it's the 1981 Holiday Bowl, right? In Jack Murphy Stadium, San Diego. Quarterback Jim McMahon led BYU to a 38-36 victory and thriller, and it was a thriller. Never forget the headlines of the Seattle PI. the very next day. Never forget. It was Seattle PI. It said BYU nudges WSU 38-36 in Thriller. Those were the headlines. And 1981. And, if you got to remember, it was a big deal because we hadn't been to a bowl game for years. And it was huge in 1981, going to a bowl. And by the way, but it's been ages since, and by the way, BYU, on the other hand, had frequently ended up on the Holiday Bowl. They'd been going to the Holiday Bowl for several years. And after that, in fact, I don't know how many, maybe 7-8 times to the Holiday Bowl for BYU. We ended up calling it the BYU Bowl. In fact, they celebrated it going into the BYU, just the BYU Bowl so much. The local Seattle Temple in Bellevue, right, on 148th, across from Bellevue Community College, right? The local Seattle Temple in Bellevue, the LDS, they put a coffee bar in the foyer, kind of like a Starbucks coffee bar in the lobby in the foyer of the Bellevue Seattle Temple. And then they changed the name, right? They changed the name, and then they're now calling it the Church of Latter-day Saints. How do you like that? Is that good? Was that the Church of Latter-day Saints? Hey, things to know. So WSU edge rushers clearly became one of the Pac-12's most disruptive rushers over the past 3 weeks. We had 8 sacks. We're talking about Brennan Jackson had a sack in each of the last 3 games. Ron Stone Jr. had 3 sacks. Wins against Stanford, Oregon State, and Cal. And last Saturday, Stone dragged, quarterback Stanford, right? Tanner McKee down for a sack. And then Quinn Roth just burst in and stripped the ball away, right, from McKee, and Jackson recovered it to ice the game to win against Stanford. And, Rolo had its finest game. If you think about this, here's something interesting. Rolo had his best game ever when he was a quarterback in his career against BYU when he was playing for Hawaii. Threw for 543 yards, 8 touchdowns for Rolovich, 8 as a player, and led Hawaii to a 70-45 boat race win over the undefeated Brigham Young University Cougs back in 2001. That's right, 72-45. And Rolo, that's crazy, 543 yards and 8 touchdowns. That is crazy. Hey, we're going to win on Saturday. Why? Our players, all right. We've got this bizarre setback, and we're calling it a setup, right? We're asking for everybody's support. The players have asked everybody to just come out in droves, support. Come out to Martin Stadium, pack it out, right? We're on a roll, 3 in a row, right? And it's unusual, these circumstances, adverse situations, to unite, come out and play, and they might come out and play with their hair on fire, right? BYU, again, is coming off to back-to-back double-digit losses. They can't stop the run. They're totally ineffective at stopping the run. They have tons of injuries. They've committed 5 turnovers in the last 2 games, and ineffective, again, at stopping the run. And it goes on and on and on. And we rank 3rd in the nation and 16 with 16 takeaways. 3rd in the nation with 16 takeaways. And remember, Delora is playing his best ball ever in his career. Delora leads the Pac-12 with 15 passing touchdowns. And in the past 2 games, he's thrown for 688 yards and 6 TDs against 1 interception with a 65% completion rate. Delora is playing his very best. We got everything stacked up against us, right? Dickert did look good. Coach Dickert looked good in his presser, that opening presser. One thing for sure, the players loved Rolovich. They loved him. Right. And so those last 4 weeks showed a team playing incredibly hard for our coach, right? Incredibly hard. And let's hope, that they do it. They carry on the torch with Jake Dickert. Now, Dickert brings a Wyoming Cowboy work ethic to the team. And he's a nose grinder, right? Mentally, physically, this guy, he's a hard worker, excited to see what Coach Jake can do. And maybe, hey, Coach Jake, that's interesting, right? So get used to that one, right? So maybe he's just, he's a player's coach. Let's hope he is. Let's hope that he is. We're going to have fun on Saturday, right? 12:30. This is a great time. National FS 1. Hey, remember, on the last podcast of the Podcast Coug, I thought that Deion McIntosh should be our number 1 back because McIntosh was out, right? And it seems like, we returned to glory with Borghi, who had 17 carries, 89 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he always plays good against Stanford, right? So Borghi had a good game, always plays great against Stanford. The defense, again, continued to be explosive, generating turnovers, negative plays, just running around, making plays, and if we can perform a full 60 minutes, we're going to be in great shape, right? We are going to be in great shape for 60 minutes if we don't tire out. Again, National FS1 12:30. Hey, that's it for episode 8 of our 6th season of the Podcast Coug. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to follow. If you haven't already, check out our new website. By the way, our future schedules on the podcastcoug.com. Hey, it's BYU Washington State Saturday. God bless and go Coug.
You've been listening to the Podcast Coug with your host, James Laurie. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. This has been a presentation of the Podcast Coug Radio Network. Find us at PodcastCoug.com.
P-O-N-C-A-G.